Hello, this is Dr. John Spink, and this is a pre-meeting preview of my presentation for the Interpol Europol Operation Opson meeting in 2022 in Copenhagen, and the title is Food Fraud Prevention Advanced Criminology. I'm Dr. John Spink, Director of the Food Fraud Prevention Academy, and my colleague is Dr. Roy Fenoff. He's an Associate Professor in the Department of Criminology at the Citadel University here in South Carolina, USA. He's also a certified document examiner, which is a really nice contribution to this work. Let's get started. So again, this is just an overview real quick. I'll go into more detail. First off, there's a lot of resources that you can draw upon. Our free massive open online courses are the main way we communicate. This presentation is actually an introduction to the new MOOC that we'll have on advanced criminology, and I'll cover that here. We have a follow-up webinar in 2 weeks, and then by the end of the year, we plan to have the new MOOC up and ready to go. So it's in support of everything that you've been talking to us about. So we have the MOOCs, the basic MOOCs. 2 of them were funded by the USDA, the National Organic Program. That's USDA inspectors, the training for the inspectors for them. We also do executive education around the world, doing that more post-COVID and getting things going. You can see on the right is also the link to the textbook on food fraud prevention, really comprehensive, two chapters on criminology at least. So first I was asked to cover food fraud prevention trends. It was interesting to think about. Lots going on this last year, and also not a lot's gone on. But first is, we'll cover the trends. We'll look at the survey results. We've been conducting that every year for the last couple of years. And then we'll talk about the training, the advanced MOOC. Again, that came from discussions here. People of Operation Opson, the member states and companies talking about some unmet needs. We proposed some ideas and have moved forward on it. Food fraud prevention trend. So I will say food fraud prevention is re-evolving, not just evolving, but re-evolving. So at the very beginning, it was absolute a frenzy of all the articles, news articles, magazine, conferences, workshops, going crazy to try to figure out what it was, everybody kind of positioning. I think a big thing is that there was a thought that there would be food safety testing, the quantity of food safety testing ×2 for food fraud. That's definitely not the case. Just like crime prevention is so much more efficient than crime catching. So I'll say it's re-evolving because it's no longer just a frenzy and the thought of testing, or let's say traceability, things like blockchain that we're going to solve all the problems of the world, other types of traceability. But I'd say it's re-evolving into a management system, just a very routine way to monitor and control. And this is the key, is evolving to more true management systems rather than a series of special projects. I have been interacting and hear from people that they've done they did an annual review, they did a second review, then they kind of meet every once in a while, not real detailed. And there's kind of a waking up, kind of post-COVID, when people are getting back to regular operations, especially with inflation that's hitting, causing stresses around the world. They're saying, we need a little bit more of a more formal activity here. And that's evolving to a management system. Post-COVID restart of collaborative industry activities. So right at the end of 2019, we were just starting a series of new programs, specifically a food fraud annual update. So companies wanted to get together and talk every year and interact with each other about what to do, what's new, evolving, customers with suppliers, things like that. And that was October 2019 was our first big kickoff. And all of a sudden then COVID hit. And so none of that was happening. I'll say now that it was before Ukraine-Russia, kind of post-COVID, before Ukraine-Russia, there was just the starts of this starting up. Ukraine-Russia has been in a bit of a holding mode, I think, for people, but I see it really starting a more formal way to interact. Maybe we thought that we'd go back to traveling a lot, and again, inflation, Ukraine-Russia, employee shortages around the world has led to the thought of things being a lot more virtual. And that might be what we're seeing here, especially we're getting collaboration, but in a more virtual sense. There's immense and different pressure around the world, although it really is consistent in the way we should look at it, but very different things. So COVID pushing supply chain changes. So things like in the US, massive change in curbside pickup delivery, It's led to micro fulfillment, being smaller warehouses all over the place for quick delivery. That's fundamentally changed things. I think we've all loaded the apps on our phones, and a lot of times we're going ahead. I mean, I find my parents and ourselves and my kids will place an order and start loading the order on their phone on an app, and then press pickup. And sometimes it's easier just to drive to the store and have them put it in your cart, or even like take out at restaurants that all of a sudden we're ordering right away and don't even go to the cash register. So there's a lot of changes there. That's led to then different ways products moving through the supply chains. We have different levels of traceability, transparency, ability to interact with the product. So that's really changed. Ukraine, Russia. So we actually did a workshop in the class I teach at MSU 7 days after Russia had entered Ukraine, and we were looking at scenarios for the future. And one scenario was that next day Russia would turn around and leave Ukraine without incident. Another is that in a day Ukraine could have surrendered. And so if either one of those scenarios occurred, then the disruption to the supply chain would be very small, theoretically. But all of a sudden, then one longer scenario was that there'd be prolonged war. But it could be that if the war was happening all over Ukraine, then that would massively change the production or the opportunities for fields to come back into production. So this completely unknown, and as of here in November 2022, still completely unknown what's going to happen as we're heading into the winter. So if anything, it's disrupting supply of product that was produced in Ukraine. Or manufactured or modified, but also Russia, because Russia's got these blocks on their imports and exports. So any type of Russian production is hindered. These are, again, immense and different types of pressure. Inflation. So we were already heading into a concern for inflationary issues, and I would say that was even when we were still online. So maybe within a year of March 2021. I remember meetings where there was a lot of concern of inflation and what might come. That's coming massively in some areas, but not in some areas. Russia, Ukraine has just put more pressure on that. The key is we've got all these different pressures, but they're also the same. Evolving fraud opportunities. We need to change the way that we're constantly looking at it. So if anything, we just have a constantly dynamic process, and that's, I think, a big trend. Continued evolving public-private partnerships. So along the way we're learning more about each other as well. There's some things that a government can do more efficiently than industry, but in other cases, and most times, it's industry that can work most efficiently controlling other industry actors. So I think there's an oversight piece of a kind of a food regulatory policy that's making sure that there are processes in place, don't a lot of times need more than that, but just assure those processes are in place. And then you've got the enforcement and prosecution end of it, going out there and monitoring, such as Opson and Interpol Europol, really critical to monitor and then to go investigate and prosecute the bad actors. I think we're starting we're starting to really define what those roles are, and I think Operation Opson is perfect for that. It's the right venue to be talking about the roles, and also things like the training course that's developed is building right out of that to define all of our different roles. Now is a great time to recalibrate. So this is perfect time for us to be together, November 2022, and industry, agencies, different types of agencies, academia, again, us coming in as well to think about it. It's a perfect time to recalibrate and what are all of our roles and how to move forward. I think that with the training course that we have on just an incident review template is a great way to start, because it's very, very simple. If that's the simplest level, it's just data gathering. What type of data should we gather? We're not talking about how to use it yet, but we're starting at the very most basic step. And then once we have that, then we can start to move forward. If we try to think about the entire system at once, then it's going to be really, really challenging to get anything accomplished. So Opson member survey, which is a great way to start as well to recalibrate. So we've been conducting this each year. Really, a lot of things have stayed the same, which is good, but we're constantly monitoring to see what people think. So here's the survey. It took an average of 9 minutes to take. So feel free to just go in and take it again. And if you take it over time, we look at changes over time. So you don't need to be the single representative of your company or country or agency. If you are involved with Opson at all, then you can just click on here and give us feedback. Again, we're looking at it over time and to see how things change. So training, the training course that we talked about and developed is Advanced Criminology, and it built upon the base concept of this food fraud incident template. And actually, 2 years ago, I presented it in Athens, and we just talked about it. We just gave an overview of it. We didn't go into detail. And then it was at that Athens meeting, and then later in the Lisbon meeting, where we really were pushed to say that there was a lot of inefficiency because there was not a template. So we got thinking about that and tried to look at how we can build upon what we've done before and move beyond us just telling you what we think as academics to being a part of the process and maybe being more of a guide through it, to put things forward, to be more in that guide role. So what I saw over time is we need to get to the point of real help for a current problem. And along the way, we've been involved. So thankful to have been invited in to the Opson group these number of years. And but now really to move forward. So the first time I interacted with Opson presenting was in 2017 in Dublin, and we talked about a food fraud overview and a country level food fraud vulnerability assessment. If you're interested, there's the video. So with that, we had some ideas, but we didn't know yet really. Well, we just gave you the ideas, but not how to use it. And the next one was Athens in 2019, food fraud prevention strategy, and then we introduced the suspicious activity report method with an expanded review of that country level assessment. Okay, so we were moving forward, giving you more of a tool of how to start to then do the assessment, but that wasn't enough. So then in Lisbon, we expanded that to look at priority setting to reduce that overall fraud opportunity. So beyond looking at just what is an assessment, what is the basic data gathering, we started to look at then priority setting, how to move forward. But that wasn't a real guide yet. That wasn't a step-by-step approach. Those are still just theories. So what we've got here is moving forward to the fourth, which is again here, 2022 in Copenhagen. So at first we had this academic idea, just ideas, no real direct help. Then the vulnerability assessment. So it's a tool, but no instructions. And with the assessment application, applying it, we had an application to a country level assessment. We showed you what it could look like. But now we've got this whole very key starting point of that template and training for new information. Real help to act now. So it's been so great. I'll say frustrating and exciting as well to be here because we have all these ideas and then see when sometimes there's inefficiency, and it's because these different theories are crashing into each other. So that's a real key for us. We keep focusing on getting all the way to real help to act now. So when we're looking at this idea of advanced criminology and this template, so we've developed this MOOC, Massive Open Online Course. The content is free. The content is always free. It's on demand. As many people that could click it, we have near infinite capacity in a practical sense, and the servers can add size and space if we have more people working on it. So that's a real key. The content's free. Now there's a certificate of completion with administrative fee. So if you need the actual certificate, you can get that. But the key is the content's free. So free, online, on demand, so anytime you can take it, as fast as you can go through it, you can listen. There's a certificate of completion. That's sometimes a formality. In some cases, a company wants to make sure that their supplier has gone through and not only seen it, but actually completed the assessment of this and understands it. Same with a country. You'd like to have people in your country giving you full information. It's a great way to start. It's created for quick edits and updates, and we've already edited it twice. Where there's been some comments or insight or clarifications needed, we can change it on the fly. I won't say overnight, but definitely within a week, because we have complete control of it. It's built and designed for flexibility, not only in changing the content, the presentation materials, but also getting it produced and getting it online right away. So we can constantly adjust, such as if there's something after COVID, Ukraine, Russia, and inflation, we can work that in right away. It's synchronized with our other food fraud prevention MOOC catalogs. There's a lot of training. We have 8 MOOCs total. It also syncs with things like the USDA National Organic Program training and others. So there's more resources that if you start in as a crime analyst and just want to learn the template, but all of a sudden need to understand vulnerability assessments or other things, there's all these other programs. Also, the MOOCs are always free. The agenda for the MOOC is we have 15 minutes of intelligence analysis, just the background basics. Even if you are an intelligence analyst, even if that's your college degree, there's still going to be some things in here probably that either remind you of some things in the past or that are refinement that help move forward for specifically food fraud prevention. Then we got about an hour there on food document fraud. Or from 15 minutes to an hour is looking at that. We then have crime scene investigation. We cover all these different concepts there, looking at the entire space of crime. And for food fraud, that could be the entire supply chain. A lot of times with crime scene investigation, we're thinking about it in a room, but we're looking much bigger than that. Then food fraud investigations. So this is looking at the different types of methods and tools that are out there. We can keep adding to this. So if you've got one that we don't have in here, we can add to it. And that includes the introduction to the investigation template. And then finally, we have the last 15 minutes, we have the conclusion. We really look at the method and present it to you, and we adjourn. So it's a 2-hour session. When we're looking at the food fraud incident templates, the details of the template. So the course presents a method that can be constantly adjusted and adapted. That's a key. And I think that, there's so many things that change over time. Maybe there's a lot of insights that 10 of us have, and the 11th person gives us something else that really does change the way that we look at it. It's built for flexibility. If this was a published academic article or something, those things can't get updated. They don't get updated. But we can constantly adjust this. It's not an exact or finite list of methods or processes. So if you have some new ones, let us know. Actually, during a webinar overview of this, one of the countries from around the world gave us a new link and we added it in. There's a near limitless set of options. Our role, I think, is to filter it down to some basic first steps so you can get down to a manageable set of recommendations. Most options are generic and you need to adapt to your problem out there. So there's all these things like crime scene analysis and crime scene investigation, intelligence analysis. There's key concepts there, but you need to adapt it. So in that case, we did that. We did adapt it. And adapting a theory is very time consuming and trial and error. And I will say that there is a bit of expertise to look at a literature review, academic review, and then filter it down to actual work processes. So that's something that we do. That's our job, to look at this in detail and then to stay very close to you so that we're hopefully calibrating this into what you can actually use. And then the role is us, like to be at Opson presenting. We're asking, do you think this is what you need? And really key is for you to share your experiences, insights, and share new or adjusted methods. We need you to be involved. This is a dynamic process. So we're presenting on the 10th of November at Copenhagen in the next couple of days. And then we've already scheduled on the 30th of November, one more slide, a webinar. So any of you that are attending that are interested, you can attend. You need to go through this, and you can then get a more detailed overview of this. We'll cover some background at Opson, but we'll cover about an hour of detail, and you help direct us and review it before it goes live. And then we're going to have this be 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. USA Eastern Time. That's 3 Central European Time and 9 p.m. in Beijing. It seems like a reasonable time for everybody. The location is a webinar, so you can be anywhere. Registration and participation. There's a form here, and so just go to this form, fill it out, confirm that you're related to Opson and that you are you're either a brand owner or food manufacturer or Opson group. We're limiting that enrollment to the users. We'll share this with others, but the key is we have a focus on the content and the users. And limited enrollment is only for the Opson members. The event is free, but it does require registration. And then later, the full MOOC program will be available online. And there'll be the attendees for the workshop on the 30th will receive a prepaid code for the certificate for the MOOC. So you can be some of the first people in the world get the certificate of completion for the Advanced Criminology MOOC. A key with that is that you are engaged with Operation Opson because of your leadership on food fraud prevention, and you're being assigned to this. And so if you look at the program and you have the extra incentive for this prepaid code, then hopefully you'll look at it, and also you'll give feedback to us, but then also share if you feel like it's been valuable. So we'll just give you a little overview of the food fraud suspicious activity report method. So, well, actually, to step back before I get started, this came about after there was a couple incidents in a row that were mentioned in the public news articles, things like that. I actually got contacted for one of them specifically that was quite a surprise that I think I do talk about. I'll talk to you more about that later. But they were incorrect. Is that the investigators or reporters, if they're news reporters, they just didn't understand how we all go about certification standards, standards of identity, things like that, authentication tests. And in four of the examples that we present in a big paper that we've written, we'll review it in detail, it was incorrect. And one of the keys was there was a biological herbal supplement, and they did DNA tests, and they didn't find any DNA. So they said it was fraud. And it was very public. Cease and desist letters out across this is in the U.S. and the state. But the problem is that there shouldn't be DNA in those biological products because they're extracts. That the actual DNA material would have been filtered out. If there was any DNA in that would be a quality control problem. But they didn't know that. If they had turned the bottle around and looked at the back, they would have seen the certification, the certification group, and the number, things like that. They could have gone to the certification. They would have found out that that was not a reasonable test. So that's something we have in here. The details will be next. But the key is a rumor is not necessarily a food fraud act, but it might be. So we want to gather the information, but clearly state what it is. If you apply the wrong investigation methods, you may get an incorrect conclusion. And there again, testing for DNA in a product that shouldn't have any DNA in it will be a true test there that you won't find any DNA, but that's actually the opposite outcome. It's a fill-in-the-blank survey questionnaire. It's really simple. You see it on the right there. That's how long it is. We've got some additional questions there later, but it's really a 1 to 2 page survey. And if anything, we're asking the questions, and a lot of times you just have a don't know, and that's valuable to know. It's important to know when you don't have all the details. So overview of the FFSAR Food Fraud Suspicious Activity Report method in action. Well, it really started from some incidents or non-incidents. And let me just first say it's frustrating for everybody. The investigators or journalists that started to research this and then found out later that it wasn't fraudulent, they're just as frustrated as we are. They're trying to find real news. And so a key is for us to help raise the awareness and understanding of what is fraudulent and what's not. First one that we use as an example is aloe vera, not 100% aloe vera. So, think about a hand pump product that you use to put on a salve, to put on sunburns or things like that. So an investigative reporter reviewed and did authenticity tests on the aloe vera product at retail stores, in the bottles on the shelf, retail shelf. And they found about 3% aloe vera. That's terrible. It says 100%, but there's only 3%. Well, I had a grad student worked with me, and we kept trying to figure out what was a aloe vera authenticity test. What we found through an aloe vera association was a test on the raw material aloe vera as it's going into the product before production. So a key is once DNA goes through the cooking process, it can be denatured. And the key with that is what it means is destroyed. So if you look at the product in the marketplace, the other thing is with the test methods, there was an estimate that 97% of the DNA would be denatured and were destroyed during cooking. So if we looked at the question again, as they found 3% aloe vera in the product in the marketplace after it had been produced, after it had been cooked, 3%. If we then consider that 97% of the DNA would be destroyed once the raw aloe vera is processed, then all of a sudden that gets us back to 100%. If they had known that idea of looking at, is there an authenticity test? And they would have known, if they could look and seen that it was for the raw material, that would have been a non-issue. Ginkgo echinacea with low DNA. This is the example I just used previously. Is that a entity did DNA tests on herbal supplements in the marketplace, big retailers, specialty retailers, and they found no DNA or very little, and they said that was fraudulent. The problem is that these are extracts. There wouldn't be the DNA leaf in this product because it would be the oils, things like that. So if they had known that, if they could have known just to turn the bottle around a little bit, on the back they would have seen the certification agency, group, entity, and they would have seen the test methods. They would have been then known the correct test methods to do these authenticity tests. They would have realized that it was not DNA. So that's the type of information that would be great to have in the information template. Dangerous levels of arsenic in apple juice. This was a huge deal in the U.S. That there was a TV a daytime show that did a review and found what they said were dangerous levels of arsenic, not realizing that there is different types of arsenic. And so the key is that at these levels for this type of arsenic, it was not danger. It was not a danger. But if it was the dangerous amount of arsenic, or the dangerous type of arsenic, then yeah, it would have been a problem. But it wasn't. They didn't know that. So again, if there was this template to be able to look at this and go back and look at what is the actual authenticity test, then that information would have been found out. Chicken mislabeled that was 50% soy. So this was a sandwich, nationwide sandwich shop in North America, and there was a news organization that did a review, and their test showed it was 50% soy in the chicken. So fraudulent that it's not chickens, 50% of soy. Well, the key is that and that's also way over the allergen labeling level. And then the key is that when the sandwich company did their own tests with multiple, authorized, validated test methods, verified methods, things like that, qualified labs, they found that not only was it not anywhere near 50% soy, it was well within the allergen levels, so well below 1% soy. So what happened there? Well, the reporters didn't realize the type of laboratory that they were using for species tests, and there must have been some level of cross-contamination or inefficient tests that were in error. If they had known about the different types of the idea of sampling plans, about using these proper laboratories, then they wouldn't have had this erroneous test. Wood chips as filler in shredded cheese. So Parmesan cheese. So this is one I actually was involved with and got interviewed a couple times about this, very publicly, national news. So this is a very catchy headline, but the key is it wasn't wood chips, it was cellulose, and it was a food grade cellulose that's has a valid use in manufacturing of cheese, specifically shredded cheese, because you want your shredded cheese to be able to flow when you shake the bag and shake it on your pizza or whatever. You don't want it to clump together. If you think about other parts of Parmesan cheese, like the Parmesan cheese that's shelf stable, that sits on the table at a pizzeria, that cheese doesn't spoil because of things like processing and fillers, and that's why it flows. So it's legitimate to have fillers in there. Now, in the article, it said that there was, excess cellulose in there, but a key is, as a filler, a key is, how is this used? What's the operation? So there was actually, legally, there was no limits of the amount of cellulose filler in this type of cheese product. So if we looked at the template, we would see, a key question is, what law or regulation is it a violation of? And along with the shredded cheese with cellulose, you would have found that there was not a violation. Now, maybe some companies want to have less filler in there, but that's more of a specification. But it's not a violation of a law or regulation. New one that a week or two ago. Really fantastic move here. So the EU defined thresholds for antioxidants in tuna. So fresh tuna, it either goes to be sold as fresh, never frozen, or as frozen and sold frozen tuna. Now, some antioxidants are very helpful for a number of reasons in there, legitimate reasons. But what they found was for some of the frozen tuna had the report said 3 times the amount of antioxidants that are really needed in there, or even practical. And so why would they put 3 times the amount of antioxidants? Well, one of the keys that they found is that some fraudsters were thawing the frozen chicken and then selling that as fresh, never frozen. And the key is the extra antioxidants would keep that product looking very fresh. So how would you catch that fraud? You'd have to catch someone in the act of thawing out the product. You'd have to catch them in the act to identify that the food fraud was going to occur, and the product would have to be in the market. But the report states that you really knew if someone's got 3 times the antioxidants, that's probably what they're going to do with it. You know, it costs money to add this product in there. So now just possession of that frozen tuna with above a certain antioxidant level, that is illegal product. And that's a real key, is that now that type of activity is illegal without needing to catch a fraudster in the act with product in the market. So the research call to action. So when all these things were occurring that we're looking at, we started to look at this not as what's happening. We said, well, how could we help and get around it? So we developed, this was all developed because an increasing number of reported false alarms, right? That's a real key, is that these things keep coming up. And it indicated a need for standardized investigation methods and processes. Because as we see is that when someone was doing an internet search as a researcher on aloe vera and fraud, then nothing came up, no method came up. And so now developing this, hopefully then researchers, investigators, and reporters will find it, be able to use it. So they spend their time and energy on the real fraud. There's plenty of fraud in the world to go find. We want to be chasing the real stuff. And the target user includes journalists, regulators, public relations professionals, criminal investigators, criminal intelligence analysts, food authorities, and other researchers. One in there that's odd from the normal group of people that we interact with are the journalists. And specifically, we saw that a big key here were investigative journalists that were not being helped. So we developed it looking at journalists. We actually worked with our Michigan State University School of Journalism Center and Research Center, and so started to work with them so that we have an opportunity to communicate really clearly and effectively to the journalists so they can find this template and be focused. And the FFSR can be used for organizing information before conducting a criminal intelligence analysis or hotspot analysis. Those are some criminology actions. And the key to this is just filling out the form. And so many times I've been interacting with people and I've been able to pull this up or send this to them before, like say a journalist calls and thinks that they found the next big melamine. Well, I can forward this template to them and say, hey, great, for our call tomorrow, here's just some questions I have for you. And so many times it ends up this is a rumor. It's not got a specific incident. There's no test data, and then also they don't know if it's which law or regulation has been violated, and that helps so much to gather information. So new information. This is where we're using the template to gather new information, to coordinate it. We're not just gathering it to fill out a piece of paper. It's supposed to be a part of a bigger process. So we're looking specifically now where it fits into the overall intelligence cycle. And we're adapting this from the UNODC and other entities. But we're trying to jumpstart the collection step so that we're gathering the right information and as much information as possible. So here's the overall criminal intelligence cycle. And before even doing the tasking of where you're sending people, we see this idea of collection. And so if we have the food fraud suspicious activity report method, we're gathering more complete information there in collection. That will help us in evaluation, collation, analysis, development, and dissemination, all the way back then to tasking. So to step back and look at the template itself, this is, looking at all these incidents, it's slowly been evolved over time. We've got a number of case studies that we go through in detail in the MOOC. I've done case studies and class activities to try to refine this. But what we did is we found there were some major categories. And the key is looking at, continuing to expand this after considering what information or lack of led to incorrect food fraud claims. So every time we find something else, we keep adding to it. And so this will invariably keep growing as you give great insight. So to start out, we've got the whole food fraud suspicious activity report method. This is under an article it's under review. It's presented. Suspicious activity. So just what is the activity? That's the beginning. Is it a rumor? Do you have a test method? Are there sick people? Things like that. There's a number of questions under that. Next, questions about the raw material itself. So are they unfinished raw materials? Is it uncooked ground frozen beef, or is it a lasagna? Things like that. What do we know about this? What are the label claims on it? What where has it been? Where is it coming from? Any processing? Supplier. Insight about the supplier and the supply chain. Do you know the supplier? Have you visited the supplier? Do you have transparency in the supply chain? Just to know those kind of things are really helpful to see, especially if there are gaps or system weaknesses, places where product could be swapped out. Processing. Would processing alter any of the critical raw materials where when tested for the presence may not be detectable? Denatured. Like if the DNA is denatured, being that when it's cooked, then it could be destroyed. Or masking. You've got two chemicals that work together. Maybe they combine in a way that you all of a sudden can't test one of them. Just asking the question if processing changes some of that nature. Formulation. Would other raw materials interfere with the critical raw materials? So when things are put together, then again, there could be some type of reaction. It could spoil a test, make it difficult to detect if there's different similar molecules. Maybe they show up under the same peaks on some type of test. Tampering. This is one nobody really considers. Is a test sample or retail package? Could a consumer or competitor intentionally adulterate the product to make it fraudulent? Has the package been tested or analyzed for tampering or modification? So, has it been a package that's been refilled? Has it been opened already? So maybe there's something going on there. But just wondering and thinking about sabotage as well. Authenticity testing. Now we covered this last. A lot of times we think about authenticity testing first. But really, before we start to move on to tasking, that last step in the intelligence and analysis cycle, we need to go through and assess the information itself. Now, of course, if there's danger and people are getting sick or dying, we'll respond very quickly to something like a recall. But before doing that testing, we really should understand a lot of these background issues, because maybe we don't need to do a test, or maybe we do a different type of authenticity test when we're looking at it. So that's a real key, and this gets into the validated method and things like that, just to give some good guidance for some of those investigators, reporters, inspectors, auditors that might just not be as familiar with the process as we are. So call to action. Now I'm thinking the call to action to the Operation Opson attendees. That could be companies, that could be enforcement agencies, could be regulatory agencies. And so in the big picture, keep evolving your food fraud prevention strategies. And the key is that, advance the country level vulnerability assessments. Things are constantly changing. Realize you don't just do this once, you're going to do it over time and adjust. Continue to grow the prevention focus. So it's interesting at the start, especially with an agency that's been focused a lot on enforcement, is that you're doing enforcement, but then along the way, when you start to realize things that you could do that might also expand the inspection to really prevent more product entering the market, then that you can start to see these opportunities. Assure a focus on strategic and emerging vulnerabilities. So understand things are constantly going to be changing. So you're not just waiting till you finally have one process. You get into the flow of the certain type of activity you're dealing with, but you're constantly looking for change, and that's a big key I think across Opson, is to start to share insight on the different types of fraud acts that are occurring, so that we have insight on what is that evolution. Focus on simple steps and step back to focus on information gathering. That's what we're doing here. All these other ideas, how we do assessments, how we talk, agreements to share information, whatever. The simplest way to start is to just look on information gathering. And if we can start to at least have the same information template that comes in, some of the same basic concepts that we're dealing with, then things will be very efficient for us, and we'll get started. Also then for us as the guide or the scribe, we're your student, provide your feedback and insight. And that's a key, is through the Opson survey, and then also for the food fraud incident template webinar program. Please help. And here's for the discussion. Really looking forward to the next couple of days of meetings for Opson in 2022. Please stay in touch. Here's our information, and we'll then move on during the session to take questions.